In the classrooms of East Los Angeles, an urban protest was about to begin. Thousands of young brown people were about to be reborn as Chicanos and Chicanas in what were called the blowouts.
Our struggle was to get an education. We're human beings. We have potential. We want to have a life that, is part of the American dream.
Back then, the Supreme Court had ordered an end to desegregation, but nothing had ended the discrimination that schools still practiced routinely. Where were the brown faces in colleges, on the honor rolls? How could there be any when 3 out of 4 Chicano students didn't even finish high school? By early March of 1968, the groups had exhausted all the usual remedies. Their recourse was direct action. The students were threatened with expulsion, with the withholding of scholarships, and some scholarships were indeed withheld. Nonetheless, more than 20,000 students in 5 East LA schools, Lincoln, Wilson, Garfield, Belmont, and Roosevelt, walked out. It was the first major mass protest against racism by Mexican Americans in the history of the United States. Unfortunately, the next few days saw the peaceful protests become violent.
And the police just went in and started beating them viciously. It was ugly. They were just yelling at us, "You dirty spicks, dirty Mexicans, who do you think you are?"
Few knew then that police in riot gear also beat up on students inside Belmont and Roosevelt High, after teachers trapped them behind locked doors.
This was the most gutless act the LA City Schools has ever been involved in. It was this dirty little secret.
The newspapers and TV stations showed up, but Castro said the footage, as well as written accounts of the beatings, never saw the light of day, in print or on the air.
And they were hoping, that is the police and I'm sure the school board and the mayor, that this was going to stop us, that this was going to scare us. But it really just motivated everybody more.
Meanwhile, participants recall that the high school walkout committee, the Brown Berets, and other student groups were infiltrated and monitored by the FBI and police.
It was 1970, it was the Vietnam War, and President Nixon had just intensified the war, even after he said he would end it. Thousands of American soldiers were returning home in caskets, and one community started to notice a pattern. Mexican Americans, who were just 10% of the population in southwestern states, were 20% of those killed in combat. This sparked a movement in defense of Latinx lives. It wasn't exactly a Black Lives Matter movement, no two movements in history are the same, but it was the beginning of a Latinx-led push for civil rights, and part of US history that many in the community are making sure is not forgotten 4 decades later. An organized effort to mobilize Mexican Americans and Chicanos to oppose the Vietnam War.
The disproportionate death rate of Chicanos in Vietnam, which was the primary motivation, was part of a whole web of oppression, higher dropout rates, more people going to prisons.
So on August 29th, 1970, they decided to march. It became the largest anti-war action by any ethnic group in the United States.
It was a wonderful thing, and it subliminally it got covered over by the brutal violence that followed an hour or 2 hours earlier.
We are saying is that this island belongs to the Chicanos. This island belongs to the Brown Berets.
Could you explain the treaty that you're following that brought you to this island?
Well, the treaty is a treaty between the United States and Mexico, a treaty of peace, of which goes back to Article 5. And Article 5 states the boundaries of the United States between the United States and Mexico, of which state that the boundaries are all the way down to Texas, from Texas to Colorado, from Colorado to northern tip of California, all the way down 3 leagues south of San Diego and up to the Pacific Ocean. That means up to San Pedro over there. And the boundary of the United States is up to the Pacific. In other words, these islands do not belong to the United States. These islands are Mexican territories. These islands belong to the Mexicans.
This island was never part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So the 99-year lease has been up already for a few years.
Jerónimo, la acción que han nacido ustedes, los Brown Berets, es una acción simbólica.
Es simbólica porque nadie había tomado una acción semejante a esta para ilustrar, para demostrar, para enseñar que hay problemas, que los mexicanos tenemos derechos, ciertos derechos civiles y derechos territoriales